Hey guys, how y'all doing? It's Colin here, and I would like to welcome you to another episode 5 of Quarantine Colin. And this episode falls along with the theme from last week, a top 10 list. Last week I introduced you to the top 10 waterfalls that I have visited before in my life. I'm hoping in the future to modify that list, but for now it will remain as that. And so this list is a little more challenging just because it takes a little more time to think about. It's my top 10 movies of all time. This is actually a list I have thought about for some period of time, not just a list that I've put together after the end of my vlog from last week. Because for a lot of people, it takes a while to think about and even consider what their top 10 movies of all time is, because for a lot of us, we've seen a lot of movies in our life and we like a lot of them. And so to really um, think about which one of those movies could be, um, in our top 10 list is hard. I've known for some time, however, what my favorite movie of all time is. Some of you might already know that. Um, so let's dive into my top 10 movies of all time. And I will not be doing a blog on this like I did with my top 10 waterfalls. So obviously, some of you have probably heard of these movies, maybe even seen them. So you probably have good information on them. And of course, if not, then go on the internet and check them check them out for yourself. Get some information on them, and maybe you'll consider wanting to watch one of them. So here we go. Number 10 is Transformers Revenge of the Fallen. It is the second movie in the Transformers film series. Um, it's my favorite of that series just because of some of where some of the battle scenes are. Like near the end, they're in Egypt near the pyramids. They visit Petra, an ancient city, and I believe in Egypt. I'm not really sure exactly what country it's in, but just some of the places they go to um, kind of just intrigue me a lot more than other movies in that series. So yeah, it's very and I like the plot of it too. It's very good plot to it, and it falls along with um, the first movie very well, I think. So yeah, it so number 10 is Transformers: Revenge of the Fallen. Number 9, one of the best sports movies of all time in most people's category is Friday Night Lights. This follows a football team in Texas as they attempt to win a state championship. The ups and downs of their season. Um, One of their star players gets injured and is out for the season. Then you also goes beyond that, seeing the lives of some of the players on the team, plus the immense pressure of the head coach, because we're talking about a high school football team in Texas, and obviously in Texas, high school football is pretty big. So, the pressure on that coach to win a state championship against whatever the odds are. So, yeah, number 9 is Friday Night Lights. Number 8 is Green Book. This one came out within the last few years. It's a true story movie about this guy who is hired to drive a African American pianist to a tour in the South. And so Green Book refers to a book that musicians of that color were to use when traveling in the deep South, where to um, as to not stir up any violence. Um, basically, it was like where they could eat, where they could lodge, um, just different things. This was a book that had guidelines for African American musicians to follow when touring the Deep South, and it really dived into um, You have a guy who's Caucasian driving a guy who's African American. He's a musician. He's a pianist. He's very good, and so it explores, what it's like to for those guys to be traveling in deep south, and they do come across some conflict because obviously the south, as we know, back in the day was very anti African American, and so they had to have this guidelines to follow, and that's what the Green Book was. And also it explores the friendship that comes about between the two. And so I would highly recommend you watching it, doing some more research on the movie. Very good movie. Um, yeah. So number 8 is Green Book. Number 7 is also a true story movie. It's called Bridge of Spies. It explores insurance lawyer James Donovan, and he is tasked with negotiating the release of a American pilot who was shot down over what was then the Soviet Union. I'm not going to really go into any more further details, but he's tasked with negotiating his release. And also along the way, he has to well, he doesn't have to per se, but he attempts to also at the same time negotiate the release of an American student um, in Berlin. So he goes to Berlin to negotiate the release of this American pilot who is part of a spy program. And he's told not to worry about the student, just, the most important, the pilot's more important, don't worry about the student. But, he doesn't care. He goes about doing what he can to get both of them released. And so yeah, a lot of conflict in his um, resolution to try to get both Americans released. Um, so yeah, very good. Like I said, it's a true story. I definitely recommend seeing it. It's called Bridge of Spies. It's my number 7 favorite movie of all time. Number 6 is National Treasure Book of Secrets. This is the second movie in the National Treasure film series. There are talks about a third one coming out in the future. This one follows Nicolas Cage. In the movies, he's known as Benjamin Gates. He's an ancestor of the Gates family. And in this movie, someone comes forth with a part of Don Wilkes Booth diary, the diary of the man who assassinated President Abraham Lincoln. And in it, his ancestor is named as a co-conspirator in the assassination of Lincoln. So now he has to go about attempting what he can do to locate a historic treasure, and by finding it, it will prove that his ancestor is innocent of being co-conspirator. And so, yeah, it's a very cool journey into discovering this treasure that will abolish his ancestor. And he takes some risky measurements to do it. He takes a lot of risks to make sure to get his ancestor to be found not guilty of any sort of conspiracy in the Lincoln assassination. So yes, number 6, National Treasure Book of Secrets. Number 5 is Mission Impossible: Ghost Protocol. This is the 4th movie in the Mission Impossible film series. In this movie, Tom Cruise as Ethan Hunt, the IMF agent. He is Ghost Protocol refers to the protocol that the government uses to shut down the IMF, because during this movie, the Kremlin is bombed while they try to find out the identity of a former nuclear strategist for Russia who wants to create a war between the United States and Russia as a way of bringing peace to the earth. So after the Kremlin is bombed, the IMF is shut down, he goes on the run with three other members of the IMF, and they are tasked with attempting to stop this madman and any of his associates from completing his goal of trying to start a war between the U.S. and Russia. Um, so yes, it's definitely my favorite in that film series. So number 4 is Mission Impossible: Ghost Protocol. I'm sorry, number 5 is. Number 4 is Dumb and Dumber, my favorite comedy of all time. This follows the wacky and crazy adventures of best friends Harry and Lloyd. Um, and the title references refer to basically how they're not intelligent guys at all. At the start of the movie, they both have jobs. They both lose those jobs. Um, Lloyd is driving this woman to the airport. And the movie starts out in Providence, Rhode Island. So he drives her to the airport so she can fly to Aspen, Colorado. And after he hits the back of a car because he's very attracted and in love with this woman because she's very beautiful. And so while sitting in the back of his car, he gets in a fender bender. He sees her put this briefcase down and walk away. So he rushes in, grabs the briefcase, and then he's able to find a way to convince his friend Harry to drive from Providence, Rhode Island to Aspen, Colorado to give her the briefcase back. And along the way, a conspiracy unfolds because this woman's husband has been kidnapped. So it also dives into the kidnappers, and they are basically part of this this whole conspiracy. The briefcase contained something that she was leaving for the kidnappers, basically ransom, to try to get her husband released. So yeah, it's definitely my favorite comedy of all time. Number 4 is Dumb and Dumber. Number 3, Star Wars: The Empire Strikes Back. This is the second in the original trilogy of Star Wars. There's 9 movies in this series. Obviously, Rise of Skywalker was released last year. It is the final movie. It ended the series forever, the quote-unquote Skywalker series. This has always been my favorite movie because 2 parts. There's, to me, the iconic Battle of Hoth on the ice planet Hoth near the beginning of the movie. I love that battle. It's one of my favorites in the entire movie series. Also, you're introduced to Master Yoda as he trains Luke to become a Jedi, and yeah, just so many storylines in this movie. Just a lot of things going on, and like I said, I love that battle on Hoth. So to me, there's no question about it. This is definitely my favorite, and will remain my favorite in the entire Star Wars series. Definitely my favorite of the original trilogy. There's so many good ones in the the prequel trilogy. I have one of my favorites there, and then the newer trilogy, the one that ends the series, I have a favorite there. But this is definitely my favorite of all of them. So number 3, Star Wars: Empire Strikes Back. Number 2, my favorite sports movie of all time, because it has to do with my favorite story of all time in terms of sports, Miracle. This movie dives into the story of the 1980 United States men's Olympic ice hockey team in their unbelievable upset win over the Soviet Union, who had dominated international ice hockey competition for nearly 2 decades. And it shows you Coach Herb Brooks, as he's hired by the Olympic Committee. He has a very unorthodox method of naming his players. He initially has 26 guys to put on a roster, and then he has to cut those guys down to 20. 20 is the final roster. And at that time, there was no professional athletes in hockey. So you're talking about a bunch of college guys, amateur players, Minnesota, the University of Minnesota, University of Boston, which at that time had a very heated rivalry in college hockey. Most of the players on his roster were from those 2 universities. So it's about trying to get these guys that play on rival schools to play together as one team. And he also puts his players through an enormous training regimen to get them to be basically, what is the word I'm trying to think? Conditioned, yeah. He promises his team they will be the best conditioned team in the entire tournament. Um, and so it just shows everything that he does to try to get these guys to become a team and play as one, and yeah, it leads. And of course, the culmination of all of it is the greatest upset in sports history. And this year is actually the 40th anniversary of that Miracle on Ice. So excuse me. So yes, it's definitely my favorite sports movie of all time because to me, um, what also this movie dives in is to what's going on in the world at the time. The Soviets have invaded Afghanistan. Um, there's a lot going on in the United States. Not very good things that are going on that in our country at that time, and so it really brings hope to this country. And to me, that's why it's not just about that upset. It goes beyond just just the game of ice hockey. It really does. So these stories just really really awesome. And so yeah, number two is Miracle. Number one, like I said, I've known this is my favorite movie of all time for a long time. Air Force One. Um, Probably one of Harrison Ford's most iconic performances of his entire career. Obviously, he's known as Han Solo in the Star Wars series. Indiana Jones, obviously. He's played a lot of iconic roles in his career. He's my favorite actor of all time. But for me, this role just it dives into um, a different parallel from those. He plays a president, um, and one of his agents allows these men on board that are supposed to be a camera crew, and they turn out to be part of a regime that wants to get this guy released from prison, and obviously the guy that's in prison, his regime um, was responsible for a lot of violent acts in his country, and so you now have these four terrorists aboard Air Force One. They've taken the plane hostage, killed many people on there, and now he himself, the president, James Marshall is his name in the movie. Um, he is able to divert himself from getting onto the escape pod. Now he's on board, and he's now the only hope, um, basically, that the remaining survivors on board have of getting off. And of course, the iconic line, "Get off my plane." Nobody will ever forget that. That's probably to me, it's his most iconic line of all time. So just, I mean, I could just watch this movie not every day of the week, but at least once a week I could. I enjoy it. I enjoy the music in it. The music is great. It really tags along with it. Just I just love this movie, and yeah. So there you go. There you have it. Let's run down my list real quick again, just in case you guys missed anything. Number 10 was Transformers: Revenge of the Fallen. Number 9 was Friday Night Lights. Number 8 was Green Book. Number 7 was Bridge of Spies. Number 6 was National Treasure Book of Secrets. Number 5 was Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol. Number 4 was Dumb and Dumber. Number 3 was Star Wars The Empire Strikes Back. Number 2 was Miracle. And number 1 was Air Force One. So there you go. There you have it. My top 10 favorite movies of all time. So, like I said, I hope I can intrigue you guys into watching any of these that you might not have seen before. Like I said, go online and do some research on them. I hope they intrigue you. I probably did throw some spoilers on these movies. I'm sorry about that. So, but thanks for watching, and I will see you guys next week for be episode 6.